Hi everybody, Dr. Goodrow here. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm here to answer questions. Anything you've got to ask me about. I am going to talk about a few things while I wait for questions to come in. So we're going to talk about apraxia today. We'll talk about communication options for children with communication difficulties or adults. We'll also talk about mixed dominance with hands. We'll talk about sensory types briefly, and we will talk about visual schedules if anyone needs those. So if you have any questions for me, now would be a good time to start asking. So I will start answering questions up here if needed. I'm going to try to connect my iPad to the computer at the same time so I can work in conjunction with it. Hello, lady. Okay, so the first thing I'll talk about while I'm waiting for questions to come in is we'll talk about apraxia. So apraxia is most commonly known for verbal apraxia, and it's when basically you have trouble getting the words to come out the way you want them to. So you're telling your brain one thing and it's responding another way. So apraxia can also affect sequence of movement for kids too, or adults. It can go into adulthood. Sometimes people will actually recover. It's called spontaneous recovery. But most commonly we have to work at it to make it better. Speech is usually worked on through speech language therapy, and everyone's approach has to be different. So there is no one approach that works for everybody. It has to be very individualized for that person. So apraxia, again, can affect the most common is speech, but it can also affect how to copy and mimic, so pantomiming other people. So like when you ask a child to touch your nose and touch your ears, that can be really hard for a child with apraxia. Okay, so we have our first question coming in. Do you suggest making an effort in connecting with classmates while off, or if they're not asking, just enjoy family time? Yeah, I think it's really up to the child. So my girls are very social. They want to be around other kids. Mia has her outlets. She has appropriate apps where she can connect with her friends. And she does have the Google Classroom. She can kind of connect on there a little bit. And my 14-year-old has her own way of communicating. So, of course, she has like the Snapchat thing and things like that. So I'd say if they want to connect with a friend, or there's someone that you think it would make them, take their mind off of things a little bit, that they'd like to communicate with, go ahead and do it. If they're not really pushing it, I wouldn't worry about it too much. So more about apraxia. So it can also affect finger, like dexterity, manipulative movements like picking things up, opening items, zipping their coat, tying their shoes. It can affect all those things. So it is important that if you have a child that's suffering from these kinds of things or struggling with these kinds of things, I shouldn't say suffering, struggling with them a little bit, it's good to work on those things. So you're noticing Adam's going to his room more. I'm not sure if he's just sick of us or he wants his own space. I think it's a little bit of both. We are all like close together right now, and we are probably gonna get sick of each other. It's just normal. Like we're like, we love each other, but we need our space a little bit. So just give him his space. Let him go to his room. My 14-year-old basically lives in her bedroom, and Mia's following suit too. By the way, for you that don't know Mia, she's 9. So it's okay. Just give him his space. He'll come out and see you, probably when he needs food or something, but he'll come out. Apraxia can also affect responding to verbal commands. And so like when you tell a child to sit down and turn around, or you give more than one direction at a time, it can be really hard for someone with apraxia to follow those directions. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with a child that might be dealing with those things. So that's interesting. When Zach was younger, he couldn't do any of the things you just messaged, and he emptied everything. Literally, fridge, buckets, bowls, everything. Yes, probably because when you empty things, you can see it, and you don't have to manipulate to go through it. It's easier to see things. That's why kids, I think, when they're younger, 2 or 3 years old, like they just decide they're going to just dump the whole bucket of toys out. And I think some of it can, sometimes they're overstimulated and sometimes they'll do that. But I think some of it too is that it's easier to find things when they're all in front of you and you don't have to push through, and their dexterity and their manual functionings are not at the level where they can like quite sort through and like take the time, and they're just not ready for that yet. So that makes sense that he would do that. Let's see. I want to make sure that I'm talking about things if other people don't have questions. If you're concerned that there may be apraxia of speech, I would talk to a speech language pathologist about that. And that would typically look like a child who's really struggling to get the words out the way that he thinks that they should sound. So it's just it's hard to have the connection go from the brain to other parts of the body. So, okay. So now, the next thing we were going to talk about, and it's in relation to apraxia, but also other things, is alternate forms of communication that can help children and adults both with different ways of communicating. You can get really creative with this. I work with several children that are nonverbal, and it really, I have a lot of really fun ways that I find ways to communicate with them. So do you mean it doesn't sound right, or he struggles to form a sentence? Usually it's a speech sound issue. So it's usually making the sounds correctly. That's usually what it is. Struggling to form a sentence could be related to a lot of things. It could be related to slower processing speed. It could be related to anxiety. It could be a lot of things. When people get flustered, they sometimes can't get sentences to come out. And then when you start thinking more about, I can't get the words to come out the way I want them to, then the anxiety gets worse and then the sentences don't form. So it could be a few different things. Okay, so let's see. So ways to communicate with people that are not, I guess, formally or traditionally communicative. So let's see. So one thing is you need to be sure that it's something that make it mean something. So let's say like a child can clap their hands. That's one of the limited things that they're able to do. And you can use that for communication. So I have a child who cannot say yes and no. He has a really hard time with the yes and the no because he has a hard time with dexterity. So his yes is this, because I know he could do that, so that's what we use for yes, and this is no for him. And it works because he is able to communicate with me in ways that are easy for him. So I get a no like this instead of a no like this, pushing me back or, anything that's not appropriate. So make it meaningful. So something that they're good at doing or something that they can do, turn it into a symbol, to a sign language communication option for them. It doesn't have to be traditional. It helps going across different places for that to know, but I think that if you're around the child enough, you will learn their signs, and I think that typically the children are around people that know them and know them well. So we have also, let's see, sit with them. So another way to get kids and people to communicate with you better is to sit with them. Don't stand above them. When you're trying to communicate with someone, talk to them. Use symbols or signals that they're giving you and prompt it. Keep going with it. So if you see a child that's nonverbal and they're like backing away from you and you're offering them something to do, then you can be like, oh, you don't like that? Okay, so let's say no, and encourage them to say no, or no. Whatever way you decide, or no works too. Let's see. Talk about it. Talk to them. Okay, so just because someone is nonverbal does not mean that they are non-understanding. They can understand you. So speak to them. Talk to them. Explain it to them. If you're not sure how to interpret their signs and their signals, then ask them. Say, I'm sorry, is this hard for you? And they will respond somehow to you to give you an answer. I'll give you something else if that's what you want, or you can say, here's 2 choices, or let's try something different. Look at their responses. They are communicating with you. Most of our communication is nonverbal anyway. So pay attention to the signals and talk to them. They are listening. They're listening. They're not non-listening. They may be non-talking and non-speaking, but they are listening. Let's see. It has meaning. It's just not obvious. Okay, so try a way to explain that. they are trying to say stuff to us all the time. We just have to pay attention to what those cues are. And the better you get to know someone, the more you'll know that, oh, when they do this, it means this, and they do this, and then you can help that by explaining it to other people so that they feel like they can communicate with other people. Okay, just always be consistent when you say no. Always use the same motion so you learn mirror your nonverbal behavior. Yes, one thing I've told Adam's former school was he is mirroring you. Look at how you behave and to see if he is doing what you are doing. Yes. Especially a child like him who is very empathic, they mirror people. They mirror their feelings. They mirror their actions. And that is a way of communicating. When someone is copying you, it means they're paying attention. That's a good thing. There's a student in my room that whenever I speak to him and I do mannerisms that I don't realize I'm doing, probably like right now, and I will say, are you listening? Listen. And he'll like copy what I'm doing, and eventually we look like we're giving baseball signals or something, but it's working, and I know he's listening to me when he does that. And that's actually funny that you said that, Tanya, because it says use mirrors. If you look if looking into their eyes is too invasive for them and they don't want to look right at you, one thing I let kids do is look here or look here. Like I don't need eye contact all the time to know that they are listening to me. Some people can't listen and look at the same time. It's too much input. They can't handle it. So just talk to them. I mean, if they're not looking right at you, it's okay. And some people actually, if you talk into a mirror, they look at a mirror and you're behind them, that's a good way to communicate. It's kind of interesting. I've never actually tried it before, but I think I might. Let's see. Do you want X or Y? So you have a nonverbal person. So you're not sure what they want. You can say, do you want this or do you want this? Or, point to two things, this or this. Let them tap at it. Let them look at it. Let them, if they eye gaze, if they look towards it, that counts as an answer. There are lots of ways to communicate. It doesn't have to be verbal. Yes, you do, Tanya. I have seen that. So let's see. Find other means of expression. This I use daily in my classroom and with kids that I work with on the weekends as well. So if you don't have a good way, or you can't find a way for that child to communicate, pay attention and use non-traditional ways. So I've been trying to do math lessons with one of my students on via video chat. Let's give that for an example. She's nonverbal. So when I want an answer, I've given her two choices. So let's say I do 2 + 1. I tell her to blink 3 times, or she can nod her head 3 times, and when she's done, kind of lift her arm so that I know that that's her answer. So I'm not giving her the answer. These are non-typical ways of communicating, but it works. You can use things like shaking a maraca, like put it in their hand, or you can, there's so many ways, and like, don't be afraid to engage with the kids. Like, if you're not sure what's going on and maybe something's bothering them, and let's say it's a student or a child who's on the floor and they can't physically move themselves. So let's say they have multiple dexterity issues. You're not sure what's bothering them. Get down next to them. Get at their level and look around and figure out what could be bothering me. Is there a breeze? Is there something going on? Is there something that's bothering them that maybe I could fix? Okay, and then pay attention to their reactions. Any questions for me? I feel like I'm talking a lot. So, let's see. So, there's so many ways to communicate with people. I just want you guys to remember that every child can communicate. There is a way for them to communicate. Whether they're verbal, nonverbal, there are ways to communicate with them. You just have to be creative sometimes. So, using pictures helps. There's the traditional PECS that people have probably heard about, Picture Exchange Communication System. It's pretty common. They use pictures to communicate. It's very helpful for helping with schedules, helpful for changing things. Sorry if you hear the noises. That's my husband working on a space in the garage. So there's a lot of ways to communicate. There's called Proloquo to Go, which is an iPad app that I use with most of my students that are nonverbal that can push the buttons themselves. You too! Hi, Richard. So there's lots of options for communication. There's pointing, there's eye gaze, there's switches, which is what I use in my classroom with a few of my students, that they can touch a device. There's one girl that she turns her right ear to, when I know she turns her right ear to something, it means she likes it because she's listening to it. She hears through her right ear. So when I know she does that, it means, okay, I like this song or I like this show, that kind of thing. So pay attention to what they're trying to tell you. So a child's verbal and their communication's coming slowly. It's okay to throw in some signs with them too. So throw in a sign with a word. So I have a student who gets very frustrated when things change or transitions, and usually I just have to give her a few seconds, a minute or so sometimes, and she'll go to the floor and I'll say, listen, we're almost done. We're gonna go in here. It's gonna be time to eat soon. Okay? And she will sign back to me, okay, and then she'll go. So that's processing time. That's our symbol to each other, our signal that it's okay. Let's move on. And she does. She's primarily verbal. She struggles with verbalizations, but she's getting it. Writing is another form of communication. If a child is not verbal but can write and can spell and can do those things, let them write it. Let them draw a picture. Let them, whatever works for them. Communication books and charts, that's often the PECS book type of approach. Some children use the yes and no. I've seen people with like things that they wear, different colors. You just need to make it personal. Just like we all have our own like mannerisms when we talk and our own ways that we say things. It's the same thing with children or people who are nonverbal. There are ways to interact with them. It just has to be unique to them. Okay, so I'm going to move on to mixed dominance or cross dominance. So it's mixed handedness. This has been coming up a lot lately within my classroom and within kids I've been working with. So basically, it's when a person doesn't have a dominant hand. They use right and left hand depending on what the activity is. This is common for people with developmental delays and different things going on. Let's see, I have another question. Any other suggestions with helping and accepting transitions to avoid frustration on both ends? Yes. Okay, so I think what I do with my daughter, because she gets frustrated, is I tell her we have 2 minutes and we need to go. So I have Alexas and all that stuff over the house, so I will say, I'm setting the timer for 2 minutes and then it's time for you to get your coat on, or it's time for you to... So that gives her time to process. It gives me time to give her time to process, because I get frustrated too, just like a lot of us do. So timers help. Pictures are helpful if you have a child that requires knowing what's in advance of things, especially if things are changing. But I think that timers really help a lot, and giving clear guidelines. So first we're going to give you 2 minutes to get ready, get your coat on, then we're going to get your shoes on, and you can keep setting timers for that. In the mornings, that's how we get out of the house on time for both of my girls and myself. So timers are a big deal for me. That helps. Processing time is important. When you have a child who's getting frustrated because you're rushing them, it's because they don't have the time to process. They need to process, and they probably have some issues with zipping their coats and getting their shoes on. It might be a struggle for them. So then they feel more stressed, and then you see behaviors, and that's when the transitions get really hard. So processing time is a big deal. And if a child still melts down, let's say it's time to get your boots on, and I gave you 3 minutes, of timing, and then you get down their level and you just say, listen, the timer went off, and what did I say it was time to do? And typically they'll move along with it. Or you can give them a choice. When the timer beeps, do you want to get your coat on or your shoes on first? Give them some control. So you can say the timer's going to beep in 2 minutes. You want to get your coat on or your shoes on first, and let them choose. It gives them some control over the situation. Okay, let's see. Cross dominance, mixed handedness, manifestation of motor skills. So each body part is stronger than the other. So like we all have a stronger eye, we all have a stronger hand, we all have those things. Someone with cross dominance, they actually prefer to perform different tasks on different sides with the same body part. So They prefer to write with the right hand, but they'll eat with the left hand. This is actually pretty common with what I do, and I just want people to know that it does happen. It can inhibit some things, and it does usually indicate that there's some kind of learning disability going on. ADHD is common with that, so I just wanted to let people know that this is a thing, and that it's common for people with dyslexia. It's common for someone to have a dominant ear that they listen with, a dominant hand that they use for certain things. So what this also affects is typically it has a higher likelihood of mixing things up or incorrectly remembering information or being able to follow directions. It causes a lot of I'm losing words. It will cause a lot of frustration when it comes to, especially to remembering things. So remember those things. It doesn't make them any less smart. It doesn't make them any less. It's just all it is it's what gives the ambidextrous people the ability to be a left-handed pitcher but a right-handed hitter. So it gives kind of an advantage actually in a way. My left hand, I can't do anything with this because I am right-hand dominant. So, and if a parent does have cross dominance, then most likely a child will too. That's just from experience. So I would say that's pretty common if a parent has it as well. It's okay. We can work on it. It's helpful to find the strengths for your child. It's help them get organized, as focused as possible, and try to pay attention to what they do with which hand. So if they write with a right hand, try to focus on that. If they seem to go towards a certain hand when they want to cut with scissors, focus on that. So that's good. It'll give you know where their strengths lie. So it's like, oh, remember, let's try this hand, like in hand, or maybe when you hand them a pencil, put it towards the side that they are more dominant with typically, or write better with, or have more success with. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Oh, I'm looking at a video on one of my friend's babies over here that she sent me, signing more. So cute. I taught my girl sign language too, and it seemed to help a lot with tantruming and things. And Mia actually did speak later because she had cleft palate and different things, so that worked really well for her. Okay, so sensory processing. There are two different types. There's hypersensitive kids and hyposensitive kids, and typically hypersensitive kids will feel uncomfortable in certain clothing. They'll get sensory overload really quickly. They're bothered by textures of things. They don't really like being hugged or touched a lot. Let's see. They get motion sickness. There's a lot of different things that can feed into a hypersensitive person. And the hyposensitive person have a high tolerance for pain. They're kind of overly touchy. They touch people, they push. They don't realize how hard they are, how rough they are. They have a hard time sitting still. They're very fidgety. They like intense things like climbing and jumping and falling, and they seem to run into people a lot. That's more of the hyposensitive end. But children with sensory processing differences, if it's too high, it can be bothersome in the school setting. It can be bothersome at home too, because sometimes we don't know what is bothering them. So sometimes we are guessing and we're trying to figure out, well, he was just fine and now he's like losing it, and that sometimes, a lot of times, is actually sensory issue. So try to pay attention to what's going on around them. Is it noisy? Are the lights brighter than usual? Are you in the car every time it happens? Are you in the store every time it happens? Does it seem to be an issue when it's time to sit at the table? Like, when do the behaviors happen the most? And then start there and to see, like, is something bothering them? Is something, or ask them, does it bother you when that touches you? Do you know, why don't you want to sit in that chair? Ask questions. It's important to ask questions. So I wanted to show you. My daughter has sensory processing disorder, so I figured I would show you, and hopefully you can see it in the picture. But I had to make a schedule for her when she was younger to get her through her evenings, because she would have meltdowns in the evenings a lot. So what we did is we made a sensory schedule. So we together would pick what number she wanted to do first, and we would switch it up depending on what her mood was. She had to stay at each area for 5 minutes. So if you have 8 areas times 5 minutes, that's 40 minutes of sensory input. For the first like 6 or 7 times, I did do it with her and follow her around with a timer, and it really helped a lot to teach it to her. And I mean, you can get very creative with sensory stuff. It doesn't have to be the fancy things. Like it was her tent. I put a tent in her room. We've always had a swing in the house since she was about 2, to help with things. And I'll show you some of the other things I had in here. So I had a bean bag for input, for sensory input, proprioceptive typically. A sound machine so that she could pick the sounds that she liked. Let's see. Trampoline, and I had the weighted vest, which she was not a fan of. We ended up stopping that eventually because it just was not working. She just she just refused it all the time. So it wasn't what she needed. The swing, we have this one. It's hard to see, but it's a bouncy horse, and we still have this, and she'll still use it. So some of these things have been in place for a really long time, but in the house, I always have things available. So there's always a swing. There's always a trampoline. There's actually one right over there. There's always things for her to do, because if I don't have those things, then behaviors happen. But she's learned at this point to self-regulate and get herself on a swing and get herself on the trampoline, go outside, run around, things like that. Okay, I have a question. What do you recommend for school setting? Child does not have IEP or 504 plan but has sensory issues. What I would say you could do is I would somehow get a handle on their sensory needs to figure out where their sensitivities lie. There are checklists online that you can fill out. They don't typically have scoring formats for them, but I do that. If that's something you wanted to contact me about privately, I do sensory processing reports for people. So basically what you'll do is fill out a checklist, and based on the percentages of what I figure out from it, then I can make up a report based on their sensitivities. So it would tell you if they are having, let's see, issues with, I'll show you, I actually have the paper here. Issues with, let's see, hypersensitivity to touch, let's see, hyposensitivity to touch. So it would show you all these different areas, and I would score it, and I would give you a report based on what they would need. You can also go to the website. There's a website, if you type in sensory processing disorder checklist on Google, you will come to a website where you can check it off yourself, and you could just see which one did I check off the most and where do I need to start with this. And it's really easy to do research online. So if let's say that one of the highest ones was tactile hyposensitivity to touch, you would go into Google and type in hyposensitivity to touch strategies. And then usually stuff comes up. There's a lot of more information out there with sensory things than there were before. My daughter was diagnosed almost 8 years ago, and there really wasn't a lot there, so I had to come up with my own ways of figuring it out. So it taught me a lot though. So okay. Oh, we have a parent response. Does she have a diagnosis that's undiagnosed that causes her sensory issues that would qualify her for a 504 or IEP? Good question. Hi, Tara. So that's something that you can do your own. If you look up types of sensory differences, there's a lot of websites, online resources, understanding sensory processing disorder, sensory related activities, variety of sites. SensorySmarts.com is a good place. There's Therapy Street for Kids is a really good website too that I use a lot. There's a lot of stuff. So, Christy, I think that depending on your child's abilities, they may not see the same behaviors at school possibly that you see at home. It's possible. I guess I'd have to know more about the situation. If you wanted to contact me separately, or Tanya, if you want to talk to Tanya, that's fine too, just to give you some ideas of where to go from here. Sometimes, well, I guess a lot of the time we don't see the same behaviors in school. Okay, Christy, sounds good. So I talked about, so far, I've talked about sensory needs, I've talked about communication options. Does anyone have any questions for me for types of communication? Does anyone have any questions for me about behaviors you're seeing at home with your kiddos that you might need some suggestions, ideas on? I'm happy to offer anything that you think. Oh, well, you're back now, Tanya. Welcome back. I think that teaching kids sign language, since I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent, is really helpful, especially for kids, any kid actually. I think that any child can benefit from having alternate communication options, because sign language can be used from afar too. So let's say that you're with your kid somewhere out in public, and say they're an older kid, like 12, 13, 14 up, and you're across like a gym or something, and you want them to come over, and maybe you have your own signs of like, not just come here, or be like, you can be like, where are you going? Like you can sign to them something. Like if they can't read lips well, it's good to know the sign language. Be like, are you all done? Are you done? Like things like that. I do it with my kids a lot. It's just nice to have it. It is, and it's sometimes, and it becomes natural, and it becomes second nature after a while. And kids pick up on it quickly. I love their moldable brains. They're just amazing. And they learn things so quickly. So use it. So I think it's great. And I don't think that anything that I offer today is specifically for kids with special needs. It's for any kid. These are beneficial for every kid. I think that anyone can benefit from it. Maureen, any resources for learning sign language that you found particularly helpful? Yes. There is a woman on YouTube, and I use her a lot. Her videos, kids love them, and she's repetitive enough where it's easy to learn. Her name is Patty Shukla, Shukla. She has a page, or I'm sorry, a channel on YouTube. She's super. She's great. And my students have taken to that the most out of all of them. And it sticks. The way that she teaches it, between kinesthetic, auditory, everything, it all sticks. Oh, sorry, Julia, I didn't see it. Oh, okay, I still don't see it. Okay. Our participant had a question. What if you have a 6-year-old son who's hyposensory? How can you tell that it is an issue or just a gender thing? Oh, good question. Okay, so hyposensory. Technically, I don't see it as a gender thing, but I get what you're saying, because they are typically rougher and tumble and, those types of behaviors. So hyposensory, I'm just trying to find my paper so I don't say it wrong. Okay, so you'll have children, boys or girls, that are always a little bit louder, or a little bit quieter, or a little less fidgety. I guess when it becomes to a point where you feel like it's impacting their daily life, then I think it's time to look at some sensory ideas. Because if the typical things that have been used in the past with other kids, or you think would be an easier fix to it, aren't working, then it might be time to look at some sensory ideas. Let's see. Do you have any tips for someone? Yes, Samantha, I will share the video later. I will. Let's see. Our participant had a question. Do you have any tips for someone trying to potty train their child on the autism spectrum? Since they are all home at this time, he seems to be resisting at the moment. Okay. Hi, Jeff. So, yes. So, it's a lot of change right now. It's a lot of change. And potty training is probably going to be kind of challenging right now, because there's so many things that are different, especially for a child on the autism spectrum. So if you are going to do toilet training right now, I always tell families to at least have 2 weeks of information based on when they go, so you can come up with patterns of when they go. So like if they're most commonly wet between 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning, for example, those are the times that you want to try to put them on the toilet. You'll probably find more success at those times. So I would recommend, at least for a week, unless you already know their schedule really well, and coming up with something that's really motivating that they can only have when they are toilet training. So if you're going to have them sit on the potty for 5 or 10 minutes from, let's say, 9:30 to 9:35, I would give them something that's very motivating for them that they can't have any other time while they're sitting on the potty. So it could be a special show they can only watch at that time. It could be a special book they can only have at that time. It could be a toy bin, maybe that you set aside just for the bathroom. Just needs to make it motivating enough to want to go and sit, and use a timer, because timers, if a kiddo doesn't know how long they're going to be there, they're going to resist sitting. And if they don't understand time limits, they will figure it out. So even if the first one time you do it for 5 minutes, you sit with them and you can show them a digital timer. You can put it on the phone. They actually have countdown timers that are free that you can download. I think it's an app that you just put in countdown timer so that the kids can see it go away. Okay. Thank you, Juliet. I don't know where those questions went. So that was toilet training. I think that it's important to use timers. I think it's important to make it very motivating, especially when there's a lot of people in the house and there's a lot of busy. They probably don't want to miss anything. And if they're in the bathroom and they have nothing to motivate them to stay there, it's probably not going to be motivating enough for them to try. So those are some ideas for you. Hey, Melissa. You're welcome, Juliet. So, toilet training is something that I've done a lot of over the years. My own children, I have trained, I don't even know how many kiddos now, dating back to my ABA time to now, of all different ages, of all different abilities. It is possible. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work. And use positive reinforcement, not scolding for accidents. Very true, Tanya. It is important to make them feel good about the situation. Accidents will happen. So just try to, hey Brian, missed your face. So it is important to have those things in place for them. Do not, if they have an accident, have them help you clean it up, have them change, have them, that's important, but don't scold them for the accident, because if they're in the training phase, they're not trained yet. And people have accidents. All the moms out there, I'm sure you get it. So I'm just telling you, just try not to be negative. I totally agree with Tanya on that one. Positive reinforcement will go a long way. We can talk about that, Melissa. We will come up with a plan. I think that the first thing you should do is get a calendar out, or even have one on your phone. And every time he goes to the bathroom, during the day, write down the time, and if it was a urine or a BM, because it will tell us how he is going, what times he's going to go, and when it's going to be effective. He also is young. He may not be ready yet. Some kids are later, some kids are sooner. Unless he's showing signs that he's bothered by his diaper, typically children aren't ready yet. That's just my experience. Yep. Potty alarms will help for kids that don't wake up in the middle of the night, especially. And some kids just don't have that feeling to get up. They get into a kind of a deep sleep and they just don't wake up to go to the bathroom. I had that issue with one of my kiddos, and it happens. And also I do think that timers, like I do have some students that I've actually had on timer systems where, because they can't sense when they have to go, they do go at the same time every day, and typically we can catch them before they have an accident. That just takes a lot of time and patience, and it does work though over time. It's kind of like how we train our bladder, like we go to the bathroom at 9 o'clock before we go to bed every night. Like even if we don't have to go, you still feel like you have to go because it's the time you go. Our body does pretty interesting things in connection with our brain. I am in my lady cave, Danya, you're right. Hey, Juliet. I'm not sure what you shared, but thanks. So, I have about 20 minutes, and I'm wondering if anyone has any more questions for me. So far we covered toilet training, we've covered transitions. If there's anything else, there are no silly questions. I mean, if there's something that's bugging you, and I can almost guarantee you that it will probably apply to somebody else. Because some of the questions we have are just, yeah, we think they're silly, but they're not. Okay, so Lauren says that the sensor clips the outside of the underwear. The wearer goes to a small box that velcros into the upper arm. It vibrates, makes a noise when the underwear gets wet. Cheap on Amazon. Thank you, Lauren. Jeff. We had a hard time with my son on the spectrum. He's now 35, drives, he has a job and girlfriend. Patience is the most important gift you can give an autistic child or adult. Absolutely, Jeff. You got it. Oh, thanks, Juliet. Samantha, she shared the Patty Shukla YouTube video for you. Juliet, she has a small house with a hypo child. Oh, okay. So, small house, okay. Think of a place where this child can jump that will work for you, that won't bother you. My youngest daughter, she had a trampoline, but not the entire time because we didn't have the room for it. So, the little trampolines aren't too big, but if you have a small space, it's going to be hard to have that. You could do one of the peanut balls. Actually, I'll show you mine. Let's see. I'm going to go grab it, and I'll show it to you. Okay. So this isn't super big. They do make smaller ones. Kids like to get squished with them, and they'll roll on top of them, and then they'll roll over themselves, and all kind. They love it. They bounce on them, and you can actually have a yoga mat available, so you can put the yoga mat on the floor, and that can be where they can lay down and play on the ball. They can do things like that. It's actually also good to have a wagon. If you have outside, if you have a wagon or a stroller or something that they can push around with weight in it, that's really helpful. Let's see, what else could you do? Let's see. So, hey Darcy! Hey sis! So, it is hard with a child that is busy in a small house. I would recommend, if they're old enough, even some weights. They could lift weights like up and down. It doesn't have to be like over their head or anything. Medicine balls are really good for rolling on the floor because they have to push, and it gives the input. So it gives almost like a joint compression type of feeling. So like a weighted medicine ball is really good. And you could play, rolling the ball with that. That would help. There's a lot of ideas that you can use within the space that are very helpful. You don't have to have the trampoline. You don't have to have those things. If you don't have the space for that, you don't have the space for that. Maybe make it a rule that it's okay to jump on one end of the couch or something. I don't know. Our daughter used to jump off the end of the couch and land on the other side. That's just what she would do. It didn't bother me. I know for some people it does. So, but there's options. There's solutions. Just have to get creative sometimes. Rocking chairs can help too. It depends on the input the child needs, but rocking chairs can help. And also, I find that the chairs that are soft are the better one because kids like to toss themselves back, and then they get more input that way. So you definitely want to have something soft on it, not a hard rocking chair. Do you have the magic cure to make Adam stop asking me why we can't go see Grandma or go out to eat? Well, I can just tell him. I can send him a video and say, cut it out. I'd be more than happy to. Or actually, there's probably videos online for kids. Actually, someone mentioned that to me today. I had a phone call with someone that said that they had to find some social skills on why we can't visit family right now and things like that. So I can do some research for you. Hey, Lori. Have hope. You should see my son with his friends. They're all autistic. They are quirky, but they're all doing much more than their parents expected when they were young. Yep. And that's one reason I absolutely love my STEPS groups on the weekends, because all of the kids that come, they have a group of people that they feel they belong with, and I love watching them socialize with each other. It's awesome. It's developing into this beautiful group of friendships. Where did you get the peanut ball? Amazon! I buy so many things on Amazon. It's crazy. And actually, I think that was like a set of 2. There's actually one that's smaller. And it was, I think, like $12 for the set. It's not super expensive, so it's a good idea. Just type in peanut ball on Amazon, Walmart. They all have them. Hey, Luke. What is the name of the thing in your office that you can be like upside down? Oh, okay. That is called an introversion table, I believe is the fancy name for it. Let me double check. Introversion table. Let's see. Looking. Maybe not. Inversion table. All I know is it puts you upside down and it's fun. Yes, it's called an inversion table. INVERSION. I will show it to everybody who's not even know what she's talking about. That is the inversion table. So basically what you can do is go upside down, and it actually provides input too for people. I actually like it. It makes me feel better after I do it. I believe it's vestibular input, going upside down. Let's see. Thanks, Jeff. Yes, it is good for your spine. Hi, Marcy. Teachers Pay Teachers has some really great stuff for the social distancing. Many are free. The one I shared with you earlier was I Miss My Friends and Family. There you go, Tanya. Heather's another teacher that we've connected with each other, and she used I Miss My Friends and Family on teacherspayteachers.com to explain to a student about not being able to visit family and things. Well, I'm an introvert too, Jeff, so that's probably why I picked that. I know, she loved it. I can't wait for them to come back. I'm glad they had a good time. I think Samantha needs that. I think that she needs that. Micaiah needs that input. So I have about 13 minutes. All right, Lauren has some suggestions down for you. Social story with pictures of the grandparents, child's grandparents, some sick-looking people. Then you can make a story that you read the same day to help let it sink in. It's an idea. Just be careful with anxiety, kids. Just because the sickness idea might be too hard for some of them to understand. They might relate it to their own loved ones. So I think it's a good idea to create your own social story based for your child. I would just be careful with anxiety. Zoom playdates, good idea. Hey, Janie. FaceTime is awesome. Yep, he hates staying home. I know, he does. FaceTime works really good. I've been using it with my kids, and I've been using it with family off and on. But yeah, it's a lot of change for really quickly. Yeah, you do. You do, Tanya. The sick would really, affect him. Some kids are more sensitive to those things than others. That's why it has to be individual. That's what we do. Any more questions for me, Juliet? Did I miss any more? I'm not sure how I'm missing them. Walking outdoors does help, playing outdoors, creating a schedule. I did do that for my daughter as well, and actually for myself too. I made my own schedule because I have ADHD and I need a schedule, and I have anxiety. So for me to I need to know kind of what my day is going to look like. I'm sure he is scared. It's very scary to lose someone that close, and then, yeah, it's a lot. That's good, going for walks. Awesome. So anything that you need for your child that's individualized, just try it. I mean, I think that your gut instinct, you'll know what your child needs, really. Try it. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work. Just be creative. Don't worry about if it's right or wrong. We know how to work with our kids. Just do what you think is best. Me neither, Tanya. Isn't that weird? Yep. Jeff, I'm join the club. I have sensory stuff, ADHD. Yeah, but you know what? It makes me. I'm okay with it. It's good. About 10 minutes. I'm not sure where the questions are going or where they're disappearing to. but for some reason I'm not getting all of them. It's very strange. I wonder if it's a setting that I'm trying to... I don't know. Well, I'll try to work on it for next time, make sure I'm figuring it out better. And I wanted to let everybody know that if this is something that's helpful, I will do it with parents and teachers. So if there are teachers that would like to, maybe I could do a separate one for teachers, or I think that it's great if we all work together. So I think that just let educators know too that if they have any ideas or if they want to share on here, that'd be great. I mean, the more brains, the better. So just send them this way. We can all work together. And look online, there's some cool yoga for kids things. Yes. On my lesson plans that I've been posting every day, there are movement options on there, and yoga is a good one. And actually we do mindfulness in my classroom every day. And just to give you guys an idea, my classroom is from ages 5 to 21, developmentally as young as 6 months all the way up to probably 6 years old. And they respond to it. They really like it. We do Go Noodle ones a lot, especially the balloon and rainbow breath are favorites. I specifically usually look for ones geared towards toddlers and preschoolers because they're not as wordy, and they have really simple directions and nice pictures that are very simple and not overwhelming or overstimulatory. Good idea, Jeff. About 9 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions or something you want to ask for someone else or anything like that? I did show you guys some of my sensory things last time. I did actually go through how to use, I have a video posted on my YouTube and on Good to Know Goodrow. I'm actually going to make a Good to Know Goodrow YouTube channel. And I put on there ways to use typical toys for children with limited mobility, because sometimes we have to get creative, and the money that they want sometimes for these toys that are adaptive is just, it's crazy. And sometimes the kiddos don't like them. I don't want to buy a toy and then have them not like it. I'm not going to make them play with a toy they don't like. So I think that it's important to have a variety for all kids, and so I have to get creative sometimes. And when I find toys that respond really well to light touch, I usually buy them. And I can find them at Walmart, sometimes even at the dollar store. You can find great things everywhere. You just have to be creative and think outside the box. And just because it's sensory doesn't mean it has to be labeled sensory. Sensory's everywhere. I have to run. Thank you for being so awesome. Make yourself available to all of us. Love you too. Love you big. Bye, Tanya. I'm so excited for all the people that I saw on here today. I haven't seen some of you in a really long time. It's nice to see you. It's great. And if you have any individual things that you want to work with me privately, or more extensively, feel free to message me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on the Good to Know Goodrow website. It's on Wix website. Or you can just message me on here, whichever works for you. You can find me on Facebook anywhere. I'm pretty easy to locate. So if you have questions and you don't want to really say it in front of other people, or you just really want to have a more in-depth solution, feel free to contact me. Any more questions I'm missing? I'm not sure what happened. Nice to see you too, Jeff. My family is great. We're pretty good. Everybody's healthy. Life is good. Yeah. I have to admit, sitting in front of my desk all day long, the computer's a lot for me to just sit. I'm not good at sitting. You're probably not surprised, but it's really not good. But I've been working out every day to try to offset that. So it is helping a little bit. We all have our own sensory needs. So remember that too, as adults, we have sensory needs too. So pay attention to what you need too. Because if your sensory needs aren't met, or your self-care needs aren't met, you're going to have a harder time dealing with behavior and dealing with the needs of other people. We need to take care of ourselves too. You're welcome, Julie. I know how much you like that, Jeff. That's good. So if, like I said, if educators want to join too, to offer solutions, the more the merrier. If do you want to do a group where educators can talk together or whatever, just send ideas my way. I'm more than happy to try to get people to communicate and work towards the better of other people, and help the kids out. All right, I'm going to be wrapping this up here. I want to say thank you to everybody who came, and it was nice seeing all these people. Well, kind of seeing you. I see your pictures on the side. And I am so excited that I get to offer help and offer ideas, and I'm grateful that all of you actually want to listen. So, thank you for coming, and I appreciate it, and I will be back again soon, hopefully.